Hello and welcome to Hawkeye Nation. This is HawkCast, your Iowa football, basketball, and recruiting podcast brought to you by Hawkeye Beacon and Rivals.com. I'm your lead analyst and host, Eliot Clough at Eliot Clough on X, joined by managing editor Ross Binder as always. Before we get started, make sure that you subscribe here on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening so you don't miss an episode. If you're here on YouTube, drop a like, drop a comment. Let us know what you're thinking because we are diving into the portal today. Men's basketball, football, just craziness right now. The women are still looking to add while hiring an assistant. Of course, we'll talk about Lysandra Barrett here momentarily, but let us know what you're thinking down there in the comments. Iowa athletics, specifically these three sports, just in constant flux right now. I was talking to Ross. I don't know if I know. Yeah, I obviously haven't told you this story. I was talking to Bryant Worrell last night, the Boston College long snapper transfer, who we'll talk about. And
Yep.
I was supposed to call him. I said, I'll call you in 15, 20 minutes. And then Folgueiras committed at
No,
about
jeez.
15 minutes. And I
Yeah.
said, dude, and so I ended up calling him like 30 or 45 minutes later. And I was like, dude, I'm sorry. Shit's hitting the fan about every 5 seconds. So it just hit the fan again. So, but he was really cool about it. And of course, again, we'll talk about him. But let's start off talking about Alvaro Folgueiras. I just got that pronunciation from Chris Hassel. I tried to find it myself, but I could not. I've been saying Folgueiras in my head. I don't know about you, but
Vul
we'll
Vulgaris.
Folgueras. That's what Hassel said. He said he got it from Robert Morris Athletics. I couldn't find it. I didn't want to have to cite him if I didn't have to, but good job, Chris. Um, anyway, man, we've known about this for a while. We shared it with our premium subscribers last week. We've had the graphics ready, we've had the stories ready, all of that. Still, I mean, it's just a phenomenal get, right? I mean,
Hmm.
there are still holes in this roster, and again, we'll talk about that momentarily. We talked about it on our
Yeah.
last podcast, but think about the fact that he's a 40% three-point shooter. And it's not like just catch and shoot. I mean, you can look at his tape. He's a step back, create for himself, knock it down, and you don't want to bet on that every time. But the fact that he can do that, the fact that he's going to be on the same floor as two other 40% three-point shooters in Bennett Sturts and Brendan Hausen. The pick and rolls, Ross. Think of the pick and rolls with him and Bennett Sturts. I mean, how do you defend that? You can't switch. You can't drop coverage. You got to fight over the screen, and by the time you fight over the screen, Bennett Sturts might either be at the hoop, find a cutter, find an open three-point shooter, i.e. Brendan Hausen. I mean, and he might be at the basket for all we know. And if you recover, he can whip it back to Fulgaris. And I mean, there's just it's going to be really difficult to defend. It's going to be really, really difficult to defend.
Absolutely. Yeah. Vulgaris is just such a huge win for this Iowa roster, especially on the offensive end. I mean, just what he's able to add, we've heard it from McCollum since he was hired. He wants shooters, he wants guys, that can score and stretch the floor. And Fulgaris is a perfect fit for that. Getting a big that can do that is such a win for this offense because they didn't have a guy like that already, in the guys committed for next season. So they've added that. He really feels like a perfect fit for what McCollum wants to do on offense. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the pick and rolls. He's just going to be, he should just be absolute dynamite with Sturts and that combination. Adding Hausen to yeah, that's just a lot of shooters on the floor that is, really going to make Iowa much more difficult to defend, make defenses, choose who do they want to slow down? Who do they want to, if they're going to double somebody, somebody else is going to be open. So, do you trust Bennett Sturts to find that open guy? Absolutely, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if I trust anybody else in the country more to do that in college
Right,
basketball anyway.
right. So, yeah, I think, we were waiting for Iowa to get a big, um, is he perfect in every single way? No, he's not. We weren't going to find that guy in the portal either, frankly. But he checks so many boxes on offense as a rebounder, as a passer, as a playmaker. Just tremendously exciting. Um, just yeah, just really love this addition for the basketball team and what he can do.
You mentioned offense several times in there. Defense is a question here. Rebounding,
Yeah,
the numbers are good because he was 6'9" and supposedly a 7'6" wingspan. I don't know where people are getting that. I haven't seen it. I need to confirm that with a few people. But uh ability to rebound at a low major level. Horizon League is, believe it or not, is I would not call it high or mid major. I would call it low major.
yeah,
Um, and so he was able to get 9 rebounds a game, nearly double double, 14 points and 9 rebounds. But he's going to need to put some beef on that frame at this next level if he's going to rebound at that rate. And the length helps. He's not a great athlete. I mean, he's athletic for 6'9", but he's not. It's not LeBron, right?
yeah.
And
He's not an elite athlete for sure.
no, but there are some really intriguing things. I mean, you can see the Euro step, the gather, and the lay-in. I think it's like the second highlight on his highlight tape on YouTube. Like some of those things that you just you have to have a certain level of athleticism to be able to accomplish on the basketball court. That doesn't just it's just not natural.
Yep.
And so he's got it. I think McCollum will instill some really good habits defensively. Like he's not just gonna like you're not gonna play if you don't play defense. That's just across the
Yeah.
board.
Yep.
But I think that'll be a good add. He's more so going to be a stretch four than he is going to be a rim protector than he is going to be, the guy getting 12 rebounds a game. Though he kind of did that at Robert Morris. It's just different. It's
Yeah.
different, a different level. But
Yeah. I mean, when we were talking about Iowa, adding bigs out of the portal, we said they need to get a rim protector. They need to get someone with some size that can bang, handle the physicality in the post that you're going to have in the Big Ten. Obviously, Fulgueras does not check those boxes. We raved about all the other boxes he does check, and I think that's what still makes this a really great pickup for Iowa. But yeah, there is no getting around the fact that those other areas not quite there. So, we're still going to be looking for guys that can hopefully fill those boxes. But yeah, you're right. Like McCollum, is obviously understanding that, yeah, this guy does have some limitations on defense, and you're going to need to play him with a more athletic and a more physical big, I would think. And we'll see what Iowa is able to do to address that in the
right.
portal. But
But I mean, like, and even as the roster is currently constructed, I like some of the lineups that they could put out there. You look at Sturts, Hausen, Banks, Maniau, and Fulgaris, and you complement Fulgaris with some smaller guys that do those dirty work things, that play really good defense, that get rebounds. That's the issue. If Cam Maniau was 4 inches taller, this roster would be set, right? I mean,
yeah,
not really. They'd still need some help in some other spots, but it's just not realistic to roll out a 6'8" center in the Big Ten. It's just not. He's a great ad. He's a great, rebounder, defender. Again, he and Banks are going to be good. They're going to complement what Fulgaris does, but you kind of need that bruiser. You need that beef in the middle, right? You need not necessarily it doesn't have to be, Daniel Jacobson or Zach Edey from Purdue. Doesn't have to be 7'4", but if you can get a 6'10", 6'11", 7-foot guy that's going to fight for boards, he and Duke Brennan would have been a really fun combination. Nobody's going to be able to afford both of them unless
yeah,
you're Duke,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
Duke wasn't going after these guys, but it's a really good framework to start with. Now you have to find pieces and plug them in and to this roster that you hope can contribute and complement these pieces too.
Absolutely. And I think it's got to be exciting from an Iowa standpoint and from, an Iowa fan standpoint that, I he gets Sturts and he gets the Drake guys, and it's like, okay, those are great additions, I think, especially obviously Sturts. But those are guys that he has, tremendous pre-existing relationships with. You expected them basically to follow him, when he got the Iowa job. Wasn't really a ton of like sales work, I'm guessing, needed, to bring them to Iowa City. But landing Hausen, one of the better shooters from outside in the portal, and landing Fulgaris, a really talented, skilled big. I think that those are guys that don't have pre-existing connections with McCollum. That's where he needs to sell what he can do, what he's done, sell the vision for what he's going to do in Iowa City. And he's only got the 1 year of experience at Drake at the top level. So I think that to me is exciting that he's able to sell these guys on that vision and get them into Iowa, without the proof of concept of Big Ten play and everything else like that. That's a really good start to my eyes.
It is. It is. Specifically, like you mentioned, Hausen and Folgueras. I mean, I had that quote that I tweeted out that Hausen, during that portal recruitment, I heard from a source that Hausen was like, "I want to play for Coach McCollum." Like that doesn't. You have to have a resume. You have to have a reputation in order to get that from guys who played like Hausen, who played 3 years of high major ball, and is coming from Villanova was his first start. He was recruited by Jay Wright, like. And I know McCollum, I actually heard in a podcast say, like, if he could have dinner with three different basketball coaches of all time, and one of them would be Jay Wright. It's just, it's kind of cool to have those sort of connections. Um, and
And to me,
that'll
oh,
be
go
a
ahead.
question that'll be a question I ask when we get McCollum. Like
Yeah.
to know that you got a guy that Jay Wright recruited, and I know he's a guy that you look up to. What do you think about that? Or I mean, to me, that'd be like, say, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a coach that I looked up to when I was younger, Pat Riley. I was a Miami Heat fan because of Dwayne
Hmm.
Wade.
Yeah.
Pat Riley valued this guy. I'd be like, whoa, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean that housing quote is great because I mean and if you're an Iowa fan, I think that is music to your ears because Iowa needs a coach like that can, you know, engender that sort of reaction from players and the guys in the portal especially because I was not gonna have we're not gonna be the they're not gonna be the most resourced program pursuing guys. The NIL is better with McCollum than it was, obviously, and you want to maintain that, but it's not gonna be top of the line and everything else. And the state of Iowa produces what it produces in terms of talent. So you need if you have a coach that is that attractive to play with, to play for, and to be coached by that is a huge, huge advantage for a program like Iowa, I think. And to have that already paying dividends, and he's been on the job for a month, I think. That's great. And it's definitely, I think, should help build some excitement for the future, especially after, players and see what he can actually do in Iowa City with guys and get that proof of concept going.
There are a few more ads that Iowa needs to make. We mentioned the bruiser. We mentioned having a big guy in the middle that can get you rebounds, that can set hard screens, that can be effective in the pick and roll game in addition to Fulgaris. Um,
That
you
rim
also,
protection is just, I think that really stands out as the biggest gap on this roster right now.
yes, exactly. Rim protection, rebounding. And you've got rim rebounding in Maniau, in Banks, in 2 degree in Fulgaris. I think we need to just see more proof of concept there.
Hmm.
But you need a big. I think you need another point guard, and if you can get another shooter, get another shooter. Maybe another shooter with some size that's similar. Because I mean, you got Cooper Koch too, right? Like, and
Yeah.
if you can, maybe you can roll out a lineup of say. Koch, Sturts, Hausen, Fulgaris, shooter. If you get another guy that can shoot 38% from the free throw line, you can play five out, you can play small ball, you can run. Like it's just provides so many different lineups and personnel to work with. And McCollum, we know he's a basketball mind. Like he'll find a way to just destroy other teams if he can. If that's an opportunity that presents itself, and it's a five-man lineup of just straight shooters, then that'd be fun as hell to watch too. Shooters that play defense, right?
Yeah.
Um, That'd be cool. But they did miss out on Tanner Toolson from Utah Valley, headed to TCU, Wes Ennis, South Florida, Duke Brennan, Villanova. I don't know a ton about Toolson other than him just picking TCU. Duke Brennan sounded like he got pretty expensive towards the end there. Ennis, I'm not positive was a fit. So those aren't the end of the world. Of course, you would have liked to add Toulson just for depth, a guy that can play the wing and handle the ball. Brennan, a guy that can get boards, but McCollum will still have some roster spots to fill as we go forward. Folks can stay tuned with us at Hawkeye Beacon there as they progress and start to get guys on campus and stuff like that. So if you want to do that today, iowa.rivals.com/subscribe. Now on to women's basketball. Lysandra Barrett hired. Was that on Friday, Saturday?
And it all blurs together, but I think it was Friday that it was officially announced. Yeah.
What year is it, Ross?
2024,
Uh,
five. It's five.
Five. Okay, all right, got it. So you wrote the free story for folks, and you also shared three thoughts. I just want to hear what you have to say in doing research on Barrett, and I've seen a lot of people say she's a great fit. Tell us why.
Yeah, she does seem like a really good fit. I think because she adds, some new dimensions to the coaching staff. She's a great former player herself. She played for LSU in the late 2010s, I believe, around like 2009 to 2013, I think that range. So this is the way pre Kim Mulkey LSU, the LSU teams that Iowa battled in the Elite Eight and national title game a couple of years ago. But she was a really good player there. She was all SEC first team a couple years, honorable mention All America. So like she was a legit player. Got drafted in the first round of the WNBA draft. Um, yeah, WNBA not an easy place to make it. She didn't really carve out a place there. Played a couple years professionally overseas, and then came back and really dove into coaching. And she's really been moving pretty fast. She has been at Houston, and well, she started at LSU. I believe she was at Louisiana Tech and Florida International and Houston, and then was just at Georgia Tech the last couple years, which is where Iowa gets her from. She was an assistant, was director of recruiting this last year there. And so she's had a recruiting title at several of her previous stops. So, I think her ability to connect with players, her ability to recruit is something that was definitely attractive to the Iowa staff, especially, that was a big question mark when and what they were losing with Raina Harmon was she was, that kind of really, really good recruiter and really solid connection with the younger players. So, I think the hope is that Barrett can slide in and really help fill a lot of what Harmon did on the staff. And, that we'll see. But I think her track record suggests that's a plus. And then, I think it's also exciting that, she's a big herself. She was 6'2". So she can, she coached post players at Georgia Tech. Obviously, Iowa has Jan Jensen, who is a tremendous coach of post herself. She's also a head coach now. She's got a lot of she's got the big picture to worry about. She's got all kinds of other stuff on her plate now that she didn't when she was an assistant and could be, the post whisperer, as she was called and everything. Like I'm sure she's still going to be getting down there with Ava Hayden and Hannah Stulke and Layla Jones and working with them. But having an assistant who can, really spend even more time with those players and who is herself a really good post, I think will be really beneficial for those gals. And then the other thing, I think is just the fact that she can open up some brand new recruiting territory for Iowa, or at least not necessarily brand new, but at least definitely less well traveled. Like her whole career has been in the South. She played for LSU, has coached all over the Louisiana, Florida, Texas. That's not historically been a region where Iowa has done a lot of recruiting. But they're going to need to cast a wider net, a more national net, to stay at the levels that Caitlin Clark got them to. You can't be a regional Midwestern program and stay at that level or hope to contend at that level. And yeah, she's a coach that I think can help them get to these new recruits in this new area. One of them is one of the biggest recruits in the 26 class, Kate Harpring, the daughter of Matt Harpring, former NBA player. She is number 2 overall, one of the biggest gets. And Barrett has been recruiting her longer than just about anyone, according to reports. So like that is a long-term relationship. Obviously, a long, long way to go in that recruitment. There'll be a lot of big teams after, a lot of big suitors, a lot of big NIL offers, I'm sure. But that relationship certainly is something that Iowa can, that gives Iowa. That's a nice thing to have in your back pocket if you're Iowa, going into recruit Kate Harpring.
It looks like there might be another opening on the staff here shortly. Nothing official, but why don't we cross that bridge when we get to it?
Yeah,
Maybe we
yeah.
got plenty of other stuff to talk about here on HawkCast today, but let's transition over to football. Couple commits out of the weekend. Bryce George, D2 national champion, All-American that we talked about last week. We knew he was visiting. By everything that I've heard, it was just like a really good fit with him, at least, in terms of personality and him talking with the guys. I mean, you look at a Michigan lifer. He's been in the state of Michigan his whole life. I just didn't see Berkeley or LA as a great fit. It just makes a lot of sense for him to end up at Iowa. So the question is right tackle, left tackle. To me, the way this goes is he's the new guy playing a new position. You don't necessarily take Jennings Dunker, who's one of the best offensive linemen in the country, let alone, or the Big Ten, let alone the country, and say, oh, we got a new guy. Now you're playing over here. It's just something different. It's a guy taking on all new things. Might as well give him that left tackle spot, at least in my mind's eye. And you've been having Dotzler and Locke play that position too. So if it needs to be competitive between those three guys, there you go. That's what
I
makes
agree.
sense to me anyway.
I agree. That's the move that makes sense to me because I think if you move Dunker over to left, then he's learning a new position. Obviously, this is still going to be George learning a new position if he's at left. But it's Iowa then trying to develop those relationships and that chemistry on both ends of the line. Whereas if you keep Dunker where he is, like he is rock solid at right tackle, knows what he's doing, has that really down, I think, to this point. And yeah, I think to me it just makes more sense. You've already got uncertainty at left tackle. That's why Iowa was after George in the first place. It's why, you've had the battle between Dotzler and Locke. Um, so yeah, I think just adding him as another um, you know, ingredient in that mix and just seeing how it all shakes out, that is the move that makes the most sense to me.
I shared that bit from Orlando Brown Jr. in the Three Thoughts article. I don't know if you were able to check that out yet, but I thought that was really interesting. If you haven't seen it, Orlando Brown Jr. spoke with a Cincinnati Bengals podcast and talked about being forced to move from right tackle to left tackle, back to right tackle, and being, I think he was like Pro Bowl at both positions. That's impressive. And I mean, it's different. Like, imagine being forced to throw with your left hand after being a righty all your life. It's different. So that'll be a really interesting nugget to follow through fall camp. And I'm intrigued as to like I don't want to put it out there yet, but like what if it doesn't work? Like what are they gonna do? Is it gonna be lock? Are they gonna shift around? Peeper and like I'm just it'll be interesting. I'm not calling that it won't work. This is just speculation. I will say off the bat, I think it's going to be fine. Barnett's going to figure it out. And you've got if it's not George, you've got Locke, you've got Dotzler. So there's guys that have gotten those reps that can maybe mix in, but you need consistency at left tackle. How do you figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, you feel good about Iowa's offensive line overall, I think, going into next fall. You don't love having uncertainty at, probably the most critical, position on the offensive line, that left tackle, the money position, everything. So if you're going to have uncertainty, you wish it was a different position, probably. But it is what it is, and Iowa has a lot of guys to throw at that position right now, and to try and see who the best man is and who can, get that best combination of five guys out there. I think And we talk about that too. And one thing that Ferentz always says, and that Barnett always says too, is they want more than five guys. They want a solid crew of eight or nine offensive linemen that they can rely on because you're gonna rotate guys, and guys are gonna get hurt or something during the course of the season. It's not realistic to expect that starting five to play all every snap of every all 12, 13, 14 games. So you're going to need to have some guys that can step in. And at minimum, I think adding George gives you a body, in that offensive line mix that you can feel confident about because he does have a lot of experience, albeit at the D2 level. But that's a guy that knows what he's doing and can hopefully, he picks everything up quickly and is a good fit at that left tackle spot. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting thing to watch this fall, though, for sure.
There are a few names that I'm watching going into the fall as potentially being some of those, 6, 7, 8 guys. Obviously, we mentioned Locke, we mentioned Dotzler. I've heard a lot of good things about Cale Winter. I'm pretty sure he was a walk-on. And then Josh Janowski, Bodie McCaslin. I'm really excited about Lucas Allgaier. He's a true freshman. I don't think he's going to play this year, but that's a guy that I've got my eye on going into the future too. So I think the offensive line will be fine. It'll just be a really interesting storyline to follow at left tackle. Who is getting those snaps? Who is going to be their guy there? And if I had to bet, it's going to be George. 1 year of eligibility, lots of experience. Granted, it's at right tackle, lots of high level play. It'll also be interesting. How do you transition from D2 to the Big Ten? I mean, we saw Dejon Parker try to do it. He had his injuries and stuff like that, but he never really saw the field. I think he played in a few blowouts, but other than
Yeah,
that, and that was one that people were really excited about for good reason. He was good, but at
yeah,
the same time, George is an All-American, All-Conference. Dejon Parker was never that. So that should provide you some level of confidence in him, and he's been playing college ball for a while. So will be fun to watch that one. Another transfer in Bryant Worrell, long snapper from Boston College, bit of a journeyman. Started his career at Old Dominion, then went D2, Emory and what was it? Emory and something? I don't know. It's somewhere in
oh,
South Carolina.
uh,
This is really
this
good podcasting.
this is riveting podcasting.
Emory something, D2, and then he went Boston College and then Iowa. You wrote our free commit story last night. I talked
Em
to him last night as well.
Emory and Hunt
Emory and
for
Hunt.
accuracy's
Oh,
sake.
duh. How could I
Yeah,
forget? But ended up at Iowa now out of the portal, out of the spring. Going to be a preferred walk-on, so you're keeping a few spots open in terms of scholarship. And this is just another guy that's been there, done that. He's a vet as compared to Ike Speltz, who is, I believe, a redshirt freshman and would have been trusted to take over. That would have been tough following
I
Luke
think
Elkin.
I think Speltz was on the roster last year, obviously redshirted. So yeah, he would be a redshirt freshman. Yeah, and I think that's what this move is Iowa had tremendous four really good years with Luke Elkin. And they needed a long snapper that they could trust and rely on. And Worrell has a lot of experience. But you talk to him. You go ahead.
I was just gonna say he's really excited to be a Hawk. One of the main things we talked about is his potential to reach the NFL because Casey Kreider is there, Luke Elkin's inevitably going to be there, and then might not probably not going to get drafted as a long snapper, but he'll sign somewhere. And that and the fact that it's a school that appreciates special teams, right? He said I was shocked or it was really funny to see, going to a program where the school is actually excited about a long snapper. And he talked about the loyalty of the fan base and stuff like that as well. His girlfriend hopped on the phone call with me yesterday. That's a first. He was telling me I was flying to Chicago to visit my girlfriend. She's actually right here. She goes, "Hi." And talked to me. He went on the visit too and talked to me a little bit about it, and they were both impressed. And she sees him being in good hands, so kind of funny. No quotes made it in the article from the girlfriend, but had to give her a shout out here on HawkCast. But
Nice.
it's just another guy that's really grateful to end up where he's at. Those are the type of guys you want in the portal. Um, And it's just good to add a veteran presence there. It's really hard to be a long snapper and be young at this level. And it gives Ike Speltz another, year to cook a little bit. So, nice add, and he's a preferred walk on. So, really nice get there. Some visits happening this week. Ryan Hecklinski shared that with our premium subscribers before it went public. Wake Forest transfer quarterback who was there under Warren Ruggiero tried to stay with the spring and the new coaching staff. Dave Clawson resigned after the season in the fall, and it just kind of left him like, okay, what are we doing? And here's the Warren Ruggiero connection come to fruition. Um, I don't know that he's exactly like if I was the favorite here. I don't know that they're gonna be like, oh, please come here. We're gonna offer you. Come on in.
Hmm.
It'll be interesting to follow, but a guy that's young that has 4 years of eligibility left. He would replace James Rezar as a 2024, which would be interesting and a nice long-term ad. I think this is something that we've talked about, Ross. It's like, okay, you've got Gronowski, you've got Brown, Stratton, Jimmy
Right.
Sullivan. How many injuries did this team deal with at quarterback last year? I think adding Hecklinski, and he was an early enrollee at Wake Forest, guy who's just been in college football for a little while, and was a high 3-star for us. Somehow only got 4 offers, which was interesting. I think only 2 Power 4. I need to look at that, but it was Wake Forest and then somebody else. But a guy who can kind of launch it. I think he needs to add more weight to his frame in order to launch it further. The highlight tape, I don't know if you got to watch it, Ross. It's just 50-yard throws, 50-yard throws. I would like to see him have a little bit more touch on the ball, throw it to a guy who throw it to where he's going to be, not to where he's at, kind
Yeah.
of thing. To make bigger plays, have an opportunity for run after the catch. But
He's smaller too, right? Is he like 6 foot or
yeah, I need to double check. He's like 180 pounds.
mm,
Don't don't love that. Did I say Ryan Heckling? I keep saying Ryan. It's Jeremy. I don't know. I typed it out when I wrote the story too. It's Jeremy Hecklinski. Sorry, guys. I don't know why I keep doing that, but Jeremy Hecklinski. He's from Marietta, Georgia. Yeah, he's 6 foot 185.
a little small for a Big Ten quarterback?
Right. Right. But then again, 2023 Max Preps National Player of the Year finalist, 2024 All-American Bowl Offensive Player of the Year finalist, All-American Bowl in San Antonio on January 6th. He was a participant, 2023 First Team All-State, like 2023 Georgia Offensive Player of the Year. Like the stats really back that up too. I mean,
Yeah.
he led Walton, his high school, to a state championship game by throwing for almost 4,000 yards, 3,880, or excuse me, 3,835 yards, 50 touchdowns, just 6 interceptions, completed 65% of his passes.
I mean, the numbers are there. The numbers are fantastic, no question. And something like you said, some of the highlights are pretty exciting. Yeah, I mean, for what Iowa, it'll be interesting to see if Iowa can get him. What he's looking for, what other teams after him are looking for. With Iowa, he's a depth add and a long-term play for sure. He's going to need to get acclimated and probably add a little weight at least.
Yeah.
Um,
So the other school was Central Florida. UCF was the other Power 4 school involved. And then Georgia Southern and Eastern Kentucky offered while he received interest from South Florida and Charlotte. Now, what this is, like you mentioned, a long play. So you've got Gronowski, you've got then you've got a mixture, if you bring in Hecklinski, a mixture of Hank Brown, Hecklinski, Sullivan, and then eventually Cash Herrera. And you've got one of these guys got to hit. I think that's the vision. I think Brown, it's Gronowski, Brown, and then these guys. So in the future, you got Brown and then these guys. And Brown's getting a ton of reps right now. Jimmy Sullivan's getting a bunch of reps. Jackson Stratton's getting a bunch of reps. I think the strategy of bring in a bunch of young guys, maybe they all stay, maybe one of them hits, is probably your best bet right now. Honestly, just given the history of quarterbacks at Iowa. And
yep.
you almost, I mean, you got Peyton Falzone on an official visit. Like, eventually you hope to get one of those guys instead of him staying home and going to Penn State a week after his official to Iowa when he sounded
Right.
super high on the Hawkeyes. That's just
Right.
nothing on Foul Zone. That's just how that goes.
Yeah.
Um, but that seems to be the strategy to me, and I think that's smart by Tim Lester. One of these ought to hit. One of them should hit.
Yeah. It makes sense. Yeah. I mean, you give yourself as many chances as possible. I think that's the way to handle quarterback. And like you mentioned, like you want to have capable guys if the worst case scenario happens during the season in terms of injuries and other things. Like last year, I would say it was pretty darn close to worst case scenario in terms of, you're down to, walk on Jackson Stratton coming in and having to even end up starting 2 games at the end of the season. So, things were getting real thin at that point. So you for sure, I think you see that and you're like, boy, no offense to Stratton, who performed extremely admirably in that situation, but you want to have some more capable quarterbacks available, if at all possible, in case something like that happens again. So yeah,
That's a hole that the program dug itself into as well. To be left
yeah,
with Stratton, to be left with James Rezar, who was a wide receiver flip. I mean, Iowa was a Jackson Stratton injury away from Kyler Girardi. We said that last week.
yeah,
To be in a position where James Rezar flips to wide receiver pretty damn quick. It's already torn his ACL. Marco gets hurt. Like you lacked talent to boot.
yeah,
Um, it's just there's just not I don't feel a ton of security around the quarterback group given what happened last year. And what this does is it gives you you're not necessarily how do I want to put this? You're just not in a position where here we go, Jackson Stratton again. You know, you've at
yeah.
least got guys that you would consider to be on scholarship to fill that spot, assuming that's what they wanted, that would what they want to do with Jeremy Hecklinski or another quarterback that they would bring in. Hecklinski's got offers from Bowling Green and Mercer at this point. If I had to bet, because of his size, because of that lack of offers out of high school, he may. It's one thing for Ruggiero to see a vision at Iowa. It's another thing for Tim Lester to see that vision. So if Lester likes the film, if Lester sees it as a possibility, that's different. I'd be more inclined to buy in if Lester's bought in.
Yep.
But yeah, I'd rather have Lester go get one of his guys than say, "Oh, here's a connection, come on in." Because
Right.
here's a connection, come on in is what Brian Ferentz did,
Yeah.
and Iowa did at quarterback, right?
Yeah.
I mean, oh, you want to be here? Come on
Yeah.
down. So,
Yep.
yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. We'll see how that transpires. It's Jeremy. Gavin Edwards also visiting this week. Austin P safety transfer. This is another former D2 situation, kind of an interesting journey. I don't know how I was finding all these guys, but this is the state of college football right now, right?
Well,
It's really
this
interesting.
I was gonna say this guy's journey is real interesting because he played at D2 and then he went to Austin P out of the portal in December. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
And now he's back in the portal, having not played any actual real games with Austin P, obviously, because there are no games at this point of the calendar. And now he's back in the portal, and he's getting several well, let's be honest, several Big Ten schools after him. Not just Iowa. So it's like, yeah, there is some legit heat on this guy for who has never played higher than D2, technically.
You see it though in the film at
Yes.
D2 and the film
Yep.
at Austin P. He was allowed a lot of freedom, which I thought was really interesting on the Austin P. And it might just be because of the context of spring ball or what have you. But he strikes me as more as a strong safety or a cash.
Hmm.
Um, what that does, if he were to end up at Iowa right now, he's a depth slash rotation piece that Iowa will do sometimes with the safety spots
And
as a,
he's a special teamer.
and a special teamer, exactly. And so that's, I think, the caveat here is if you're Michigan State, Maryland, the two schools that are he's also visiting this week. Both programs were under 500. Maryland's just a very meh program with not a lot of fan interest. I mean, if they pay him a bunch of money, who
Right.
knows? I don't know that they have a ton of NIL in football either, but Michigan State's another school that's really been looking to try to get a safety of the future. They were trying to get Marcello Vitti for a little while to decommit from Iowa. That wasn't going to happen. But they're really trying to get a safety of the future. Whereas with Edwards, I think he's a plug and play more than likely at some of these schools. At Iowa, it is to a degree a plug and play in that you trust him if he's on the field. And when I say he's a strong safety cash type, he's not a Quinn Schulte. He's not a wait, sit back on the back end of the defense and be the safety net. He's a fire after the ball, provide run support,
He's
occasionally
he
sack the quarterback kind of thing.
he's a little more like a Sebastian Castro type.
Yeah. 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 And the reason, he goes to Austin P for a year or for not even a year, for a few months and transfers is because you can see the film. And like, I'm not saying Iowa did this at all. That's not what I'm saying. But when you're that good and programs above are hearing about it, they're going to reach out to your camp. They're going to
Yep,
say, hey, you could play power four ball. Come on down.
right.
So that's what's happening here. And he got some offers from some other group of
Yeah, I
five
mean,
programs too.
this looks like a classic case of a really talented player slipped through the cracks, went to D2 for a couple years and now is, I would say, pretty deservedly blowing up as a potential D1 player, FBS player. And that's great for him. Hope see where it works out for him. I do think, if he's looking for that immediate playing time, Iowa looks like a tough fit. The safety positions and the cash is they have some pretty good options there right now. We've talked about Iowa adding D backs out of the portal. We've been thinking, cornerback is where they really need to, land an impactful player. Edwards, like you said, film looks great. I think he'd be an exciting addition. Um, Not a guy that I think you would expect to play a huge role in 2025 this fall for sure.
I think what we do have to note though is between safety cash, between both safety spots and cash, how many players did we see last season? Cohen Entringer, Sebastian Castro, Xavier Wampa, Zach Lutmer, Quinn Schulte. Am I missing anyone?
Those are the big five, I think.
Right. So there's going to be guys that get play, right?
Yep.
We've heard a little bit about Kale Kolarik in this spring ball. Now he's a walk-on. I'm not saying he's going to see the field a ton this year, and I like what I've seen from him on open practice days, kids days, what have you. But Iowa needs some of that talent, to mix in there. So they're not, I wouldn't call them deep. They're
Yeah.
flexible between those three positions.
Yep.
So you add a little bit of depth there. I think that'd be good. Y'all know I'm really high on Olante Dean. I'm not saying I don't think he's going to play this year unless it's special teams, probably special teams. But it also, with Edwards, it provides you some of that flexibility of that, was it nickel package that they ran last year with Lutmer as the third linebacker or
Yeah.
the second linebacker? I don't remember what it was. It was a 4-1-6 or something. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, 4-1-6, something like that. Um, and so it provides some of that defensive versatility as a unit too. So no, he probably wouldn't be like every down, but he would be a vital part of the defensive effort if he were to end up at Iowa. And I think that's what you sell. And then I think you sell Wampa's graduating and then Cohen's graduating. And, you've got to, I think Lutmer and, no, Lutmer has 3 years left. So he'd be a paired unit with Lutmer, guy that he could learn from. I think it would be a really good fit, and I think he'd
And
be better off at Iowa with the NFL potential as opposed to Michigan State or Maryland.
I say, and you sell Phil Parker. I mean, you
Yeah,
sell,
yeah.
one of the best defensive coordinators and defensive backs coaches in college football who has, sent so many guys to the NFL. That is a huge point in Iowa's favor, and I'm sure that's certainly going to be on Edwards' mind as he makes his decision about, where to end up.
One thing we didn't add to the outline, now that we're talking a little bit about more about spring ball, is I want to hear like one or two things that you want to hear about or watch for this weekend after we get to this. So just let it stew for a little bit. DeAndre Smith committed this weekend. Nobody saw that shit coming. You're right now. Wide receiver from Florida, Fletcher High School. I went to church for Easter Sunday, hopped out to my car, checked my phone. He committed 38 minutes ago. What? And he had offers from Miami, Indiana, Louisville, just a really just kind of, oh crap. I haven't even, here's the state of things right now between driving 5 hours yesterday, the portal. I haven't even watched this film. I didn't like this is craziness at this point in time. But Iowa gets a second receiver along with Brody Schaefer. To get wide receivers this early, I think is telling of what Budmeyer is selling, of what Lester is selling, because that didn't happen in 2025. Terrence Smith was like maybe up until the very end and then committed. And I think that's a really good addition. And the other thing is, I think they're in a spot to add a few receivers here in this class because Smith was the only one in 2025. They're going to lose Sam Phillips, Jacob Gill, Caden Weegan, maybe another guy in there. I don't. I think there's another receiver in there in this class. But they're in a spot to add a few. So there's a couple guys to continue to watch in this 2026 class. But yeah, a nice add, a speedster, a guy that did quite a bit on special teams too, returned a kick for a touchdown. Oh, Seth Anderson is another graduator, or another senior that's going to be gone. So this is a class to add some depth. DeAndre Smith, sort of a slot receiver when looking at him, a guy that can make some big plays. So nice addition. Some really good competition there. Feels like a fit. Hoping to talk to him, hoping to connect with somebody from his camp, so we can learn a little bit more about that here soon. So let's move on to spring ball with the spring game or spring open practice happening this weekend. We probably won't pod until till afterwards, so let's hit it now. What's maybe one or two things that you're really wanting to check out and watch for this weekend, Ross?
Great question.
I'll be
Thankfully,
watching. I'll be there. Ross will still be in Minneapolis, but
yeah,
I'll be
thank,
there.
yeah, I'm glad you gave me a couple minutes to think about it too.
Yeah.
I would say the two things I think I'm most interested in are the passing game, even with the caveat, and it's a big caveat, that we're not going to get Mark Gronowski, who is obviously the presumed starter in next fall, and we're not going to get to see him throw any passes, and that's a given. But I am still curious to see what does the passing game look like, now that Tim Lester has been here for over a year, has really had time to install what he wants to do, has time to get guys up to speed. The receiving group is, knock on wood, about as healthy, I think, as it's been in quite some time. Seth Anderson has been banged up almost since he got to Iowa City. Seems like he's finally healthy. Vanderzee's recovered, from the injury he had towards the end of last season. So a lot of healthy dudes. What do they look like? What is the passing? And also obviously, we're gonna get the diet version of the passing attack at the spring game. We're not gonna get anything, super elaborate or whatever, exciting, etc. But still, what does it look like with these guys who've been there now for a couple years, who've been in this passing offense for over a year? And, is there that progress, even with, Stratton and Hank Brown being the quarterbacks, leading the charge on Saturday, is there still that? Because the passing game, we've said it ad nauseum, it has just absolutely stunk the last couple seasons. It was Co-
No.
yeah, I know that's surprising. It's not something we've mentioned before, is it? It was covered up last year by the fact that the running game was phenomenal. Caleb Johnson was outstanding. Offensive line was really, really much improved and really solid. Passing game still terrible. Are we finally going to see that progress? No one's expecting this to be, top tier top flight passing attack. But can the passing attack finally hold its own, for the Iowa offense and do what it needs to do? So just to see what kind of progress that part of the team is making is high on my list. And then the other thing is, what does the D line look like? Are they able to get pressure on the O line? Are they disruptive? Because I think, there's, a lot of questions about that group and how they've held up um and the depth there. So like what does that unit look like? Are they able to push around the offensive line? Are they Are they killing a lot of plays and getting to the quarterback, or is there still some work that needs to happen there? So that's kind of where I'm at. What about you?
When you say passing game, I'm really interested in Hank Brown. This is either the full, like the most extensive reps we will be able to see of him with the ones. Saw a pass from him to RVZ's back shoulder that he caught on Twitter right before we started recording here. That was really cool. But that extended Hank Brown snaps. I'm everybody's going to be excited about. I mean, maybe not everybody, but I'm going to be excited about Jimmy Sullivan to see some reps there. We're probably not going to see a ton, but it'll be fun to see what he does. Those are just to add to your passing game notes. And Sam Phillips, by the way, which we've heard some things about and shared on the premium board. But to me, it's cornerback and it's linebacker. Jaden
Yeah,
Harrell is not Jay Higgins. Will he be good enough? Carson Shire is another guy that's been on the sideline. Will he be as athletic and as freaky as we've heard about? Who's playing Leo? Is it
yeah. I
is
mean,
it Jackson Rexroth? Are we
like
going
I
to
said,
see?
Iowa went from Jack Campbell to Jay Higgins, and like that was a seamless transition, basically. But yeah, now can the new guys keep that going? Sorry,
Right.
go on, go ahead.
Are we going to see Jackson Rexroth? Are we going to see Jaden Montgomery? Are we going to see Landon Van Keekricks? Are we going to see Cam Buffington? Are we going to see Derek Weiskopf? Like it's just a mixture of uncertainty at a spot that's been so certain for several years. So that'll be one to watch. And like I mentioned, cornerback, heard some good things about TJ Hall in camp. Is Deshaun Lee going to be that bona fide second starter? Is TJ Hall going to be able to solidify that spot? Um, and where's Iowa? How hard are they going to hit the portal when it comes to that? How hard are they going to need to hit the portal relative to how bad or how good the corners are going to be this weekend? That'll be one that I definitely watch as well. Um, are there going to be any more portal entries this week, and what holes are there going to be in those position groups? That'll be one to keep an eye on. And then, of course, left tackle. Left tackle will be one that's really, really going to be one of note to watch. How much are those defenders going to be on Hank Brown's butt? Obviously they're not going to be sacking him because it's spring game and everybody's going to be careful, but that'll be really interesting to watch as well. Um, yeah, that's pretty much where we're at. Of course, we'll have more pre-spring game stuff to share this week on Hawkeye Beacon, and as well as portal coverage. And Ross and I are going to try to stay sane this whole time, so you can be an outsider looking in on the insane asylum that is Hawkeye Beacon right now. We're having fun. It's a lot, but we're having fun over there, and you can be part of the conversation today. Iowa.rivals.com/subscribe. Before we get out of here, what else are you watching for this weekend? What other needs does Iowa have for men's basketball in the portal? What do you think? Drop those in the comments. Drop a like. Hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode, whether you're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, what have you. Leave that rate and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. So once again, folks, I am Elliot Clough at Elliot Clough on X, joined as always by managing editor Ross Binder. For now, we will see you next time.